On May 4th, 2024, the course of hip-hop was forever altered. Kendrick Lamar unleashed Not Like Us, a record that didn't just claim him his fourth Billboard #1 hit, it catapulted him to the pinnacle of superstardom. The track secured Kendrick a spot on the 2025 Super Bowl stage, where he'll be performing before over 100 million viewers, while simultaneously sealing his victory in what many now call the most iconic rap battle of all time. Then, on November 22nd, 2024, Kendrick continued his reign, dropping his highly anticipated project GNX to monumental commercial and critical acclaim. But just 4 days later, on November 26, 2024, the music industry braced for a seismic shift, one that transcended Kendrick, Drake, or even hip-hop itself. Drake, a titan in his own right, struck back with not one, but two petitions. His target? Universal Music Group, his own label and the largest power broker in music. In a move as shocking as it was audacious, Drake accused UMG of masterminding illegal marketing schemes to artificially boost the success of Kendrick's Not Like Us. And in doing so, Drake claimed they not only rigged the system in Kendrick's favor, but also tarnished Drake's name in the process. This wasn't just a personal grudge or a petty rivalry. It was a challenge to the very foundations of the music business. What followed would ripple across the industry, threatening to unravel its deepest, darkest secrets and potentially change the rules of the game forever. If Drake's petitions turn into full lawsuits, and if he wins, this could force massive changes in how the music industry operates. Here's how. Right now, big labels like Universal Music Group spend huge amounts of money to make sure their artists dominate radio and streaming playlists. If these practices are exposed and deemed illegal, it could level the playing field. Smaller, independent artists might have a better shot at getting their music heard without needing a huge marketing budget. Radio stations and streaming platforms would have to promote music more fairly based on what people actually want to listen to rather than who pays the most. Playlists like Spotify's New Music Friday or Top Hits are critical to an artist's success. If the lawsuit forces platforms to stop manipulating these playlists for profit, it could make it easier for smaller artists to get a fair chance at being featured. Playlists might start reflecting what's trending naturally rather than being stuffed with tracks that labels pay to push. Big labels might have to start spending money in different ways. Instead of paying off platforms legally or illegally, they have to focus on more authentic ways to market artists, like social media campaigns or live performances. This could give independent artists who rely on organic growth and fan support a leg up. Right now, the system is tilted heavily in favor of artists signed to huge record labels. If these pay-to-play schemes are dismantled, indie artists and smaller labels might find it easier to compete. Fans might also discover more diverse music since platforms would be less focused on promoting a handful of big-budget stars. But what happens if this lawsuit goes badly for Drake? Drake is taking a massive risk with these petitions. If things don't go well, here's how it could affect his career. Firstly, Drake has been accused in the past of benefiting from the very same practices he's now calling out. For example, when his album Scorpion came out in 2018, Spotify put his face on nearly every playlist, even if the playlist wasn't about rap or R&B. Critics might say he's only challenging the system now because it no longer works in his favor. If people see him as hypocritical, it could damage his reputation. But beyond just what the fans think, UMG, Spotify, and iHeartMedia, the three institutions that Drake is going after, are extremely powerful players within the music business, and they're not going to take this lightly. If they feel threatened, they could subtly retaliate by giving Drake less visibility on their platforms or opening the Pandora's box to the shady marketing tactics that Drake and his team themselves have used on Drake's music in the past. Losing support from these platforms could massively hurt his streams, sales, and overall reach. And even worse, these massive institutions coming after Drake and exposing his malpractices will most likely lead him to lose massive support from his own fan base in a much higher magnitude than any Kendrick diss track ever had. So you might be wondering, why on earth would Drake take on the colossal risk of exposing a system that he himself has profited from so heavily in the past? Is it all because of the devastating blow Kendrick's record Not Like Us dealt to his reputation? Or is there something bigger at play here? I've already broken down Drake's first petition against UMG in a separate video, covering all the allegations he's made against the industry giant. You can find a link to that in the description. But today, we're diving deep into the second petition Drake filed against his own label, one that could either completely destroy his career or reshape the way the music industry operates forever. Here's the thing, before this feud with Kendrick Lamar, Drake was never at odds with UMG. In fact, he was their golden child, their prize pony, the artist who single-handedly raked in hundreds of millions of dollars for them year after year. Hip-hop heavyweights like Kanye West, who have left the major label system to go independent, have often spoke about the exploitation that goes on within the inner workings of these major record labels, and he's also touched on Drake's deep loyalty to the industry's biggest label of all, UMG. Kanye even referred to UMG's CEO, Lucian Grange, as Drake's rich baby daddy, the man behind the massive machine keeping Drake tied to the major label system. According to Kanye, this is why Drake, despite his superstardom, will never truly attain billionaire status and elite financial freedom.
They say rich baby daddy, it's like Drake has a rich baby daddy named Lucian and Universal. He's like, like, man, my daddy got it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, my daddy controlled the spins. My daddy got the DSPs. My daddy. Drake has a rich baby daddy named Lucian.
So all of his streams in the number ones is controlled by someone named Lucian.
Well, Lucian worked for people who control the banks in Africa.
Now let's not forget, Drake reportedly received a jaw-dropping $400 million payday from Lucian Grange himself, cementing their partnership. So why would Drake suddenly turn on the very institution that has paid him so handsomely? Why go after the label that's elevated him to the pinnacle of mainstream hip-hop? It seems counterintuitive, even reckless, but the answers might become clearer as we dissect this second petition, a move that could either solidify Drake's legacy as a whistleblower against industry corruption or bring his entire empire crashing down. So let's unpack it. So it's important to note that Drake has filed petitions, not lawsuits. He's essentially filing these motions to request permission to depose representatives of Universal Music Group and iHeartMedia before initiating a formal lawsuit. The petition revolves around Kendrick's song, Not Like Us, which was released through Universal Music Group through their Interscope Records division. Obviously, the song targets Drake, accusing him of being a PDF file, alleging criminal-esque behavior, and whether or not Universal Music Group's marketing tactics played any role in the success, the song became a massive hit, dominating the charts and media discourse. This led Drake to respond with a diss track of his own, The Heart Part 6, denying the allegations and countering Kendrick's claims. But the damage to his reputation and businesses remained a concern for Drake. His petition argues that UMG and iHeartMedia deliberately amplified the song's release and promotion to profit from its virality at his expense. The petition provides detailed allegations against UMG, claiming the company not only approved the song's release, but also facilitated its success through extensive financial support, viral marketing campaigns, and partnerships with media platforms, including iHeartMedia. UMG allegedly used strategies like payola, which is a practice involving undisclosed payments to radio stations for airplay, in order to make Not Like Us a viral mega hit. Drake asserts that UMG made covert payments to various platforms and independent promoters, even employing bots to artificially inflate the streaming numbers of Not Like Us. The petition claims that UMG had the power to block or alter the release of the song, but instead chose to heavily promote it. And this is interesting because just a few days after Not Like Us was released, TMZ reported via a blind item, which is essentially a news story that reveals details about a topic, but not the identities of the people involved. No official source from any party came out to confirm this information, but they had reported that there was insider knowledge claiming that PG Lang, Kendrick's label, and XO, The Weeknd's label, were asked by Universal Music Group to end the beef with OVO, Drake's label. Kendrick apparently wasn't budging at all. The UMG was pressing hard on their request to squash the beef. UMG also had a Zoom meeting with all the parties involved, and they wanted Kendrick, either directly or said through his PG Lang label, to post a statement clarifying that Drake is not a PDF file. The source had also claimed that Drake was losing the beef in UMG's eyes, so from UMG's perspective, the sooner the beef ends, the better, and the PDF allegations directed at Drake were costing UMG, Nike, and other parties involved a lot of money. And while it's important to take this with a grain of salt, due to the fact that sources with direct knowledge told TMZ that there was no such meeting between UMG, Drake, and Kendrick, it's also interesting to note that this narrative does align with the petition that Drake filed, claiming that UMG had the power to block or alter the release of the Not Like Us record. But again, he's accusing them of instead choosing to heavily promote it and using their licensing rights and partnerships with third parties to aggressively spread the song. This included making it available for radio play through iHeartMedia, a company that operates the country's largest radio network. iHeartMedia has a wide reach, claiming it engages 9 out of 10 Americans every month through its stations and digital platforms. It also has a close financial relationship with UMG, paying the company for the rights to play its music and contributing significant revenue to UMG's business. This relationship is vital for iHeartMedia, as UMG controls much of the music that dominates the radio charts. The promotional campaign for Not Like Us resulted in staggering success. In its first week, the song topped the Billboard Hot 100 charts with 5 million radio airplay impressions. By the time the music video was released, the song had garnered an additional 40 million plays on the radio. By November 2024, it had dominated various Billboard and iHeartRadio charts for months. The song also shattered streaming records, achieving 96 million streams within a week of its release and breaking the record for the most weeks at #1 on Billboard's Hot Rap Songs chart. Drake alleges that UMG achieved the success through unethical and possibly illegal practices. He's claiming again that UMG used a scheme known as payola, where companies secretly pay radio stations to play certain songs, which is a practice prohibited under US law. According to inside sources, UMG made covert payments to radio platforms, including hiring independent promoters to distribute funds to radio stations. Additionally, Drake alleges that UMG directed its marketing team to use discretionary funds to pay third parties to inflate the song's popularity artificially. This included paying influencers to promote the song and allegedly using bots to generate fake streams on platforms like Spotify. A whistleblower even claimed that bots were used to create 30 million fake streams within days of the song's release. It's important to note, however, that the whistleblower cited in the petition was an anonymous individual who was a guest on DJ Academic's stream, and Academic's claims that his sources at Spotify tell him that this man's accusations and story was completely fabricated. UMG also removed copyright restrictions on Not Like Us, allowing content creators on platforms like YouTube and Twitch to use the song freely. This tactic, known as whitelisting, helped the song go viral by encouraging influencers to spread it without fear of legal consequences. Drake believes these actions were deliberately designed to harm his reputation and increase UMG's profits at his expense. However, he does not have enough information to sue UMG just yet for defamation. He needs more evidence to determine whether UMG and its partners, including possibly iHeartMedia, engaged in fraud or violated racketeering laws. Specifically, Drake wants to uncover details about UMG's alleged payola scheme and how iHeartMedia may have been involved. Drake's petition asks the court to allow him to take oral depositions from corporate representatives of iHeartMedia and UMG. These depositions are necessary, Drake argues, to uncover critical evidence about the company's roles in promoting Not Like Us. He emphasizes that the likely benefit of these depositions outweighs any potential burden or cost to the companies, and that this step is crucial for him to make an informed decision about whether or not to pursue a lawsuit. He also highlights that Texas law explicitly allows depositions to investigate potential claims before filing a lawsuit. But the accusation that Drake makes that should scratch heads is the fact that he believes these actions were deliberately designed to harm his reputation and increase UMG's profits at his expense. It's important to remember that Drake was UMG's cash cow. Larry Jackson, a prominent figure within the music industry, has even gone on record stating that Drake's catalog earns more revenue on streaming services than the entirety of the catalogs from the 70s, 80s, and 90s combined.
The thing that I'll say to you about the artist you just mentioned is that if you look at his music, he's bigger than the 70s, 80s, and 90s combined. I don't mean like one artist from that era, I mean all of those eras combined, not the 90s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Because the catalog that is the richest catalog right now, I'm probably saying something that hasn't been stated.
So why in the world would Universal Music Group deliberately promote a song that has tarnished Drake's reputation, causing irreversible damage when Drake is seemingly one of their most profitable assets? Well, the answer to that question lies in the fine print of the massive record deal that Drake previously signed with Universal Music Group. Like I mentioned before, he signed a groundbreaking $400 million deal with UMG, a deal that's been called, quote-unquote, a 360 deal on steroids. His deal with UMG wasn't just about money. It was a massive industry milestone. Unlike traditional 360 deals, where labels take a percentage of everything from album sales to tour revenue, this agreement went even further. UMG didn't just invest in Drake's recordings. They gained a share of profit from his publishing, merchandise, licensing, and even visual media projects. Yet, here's the twist. Drake retained ownership of his masters, something unheard of in older contracts. Owning your masters means every time your song is streamed, sold, or licensed, the royalties come directly to you. So, if Drake owns his recordings, you might ask, how is UMG profiting? And that's where this deal got creative. UMG still earned from distributing his music to platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. They likely handle licensing deals for Drake's songs in ads, films, and TV shows. And if this deal included his publishing rights, they're earning a cut every time his songs are streamed, performed, or played publicly. And the scope of the deal stretched far beyond simply the profits acquired from Drake's music. UMG was taking a slice of the pie from the profits of his tours, merchandise, and visual projects. This plays major significance for many different reasons, many that we'll touch on shortly in this video. But for now, it's important to note that while Drake has been releasing an immense amount of projects since signing this deal with UMG back in 2021, he also embarked on one of the longest hip-hop tours in history with a staggering 80 dates, all of which generated $320 million, making it the highest grossing hip-hop tour in history. In leaked texts with Drake's ex-girlfriend, he described his life as being on slave to Live Nation mode. Live Nation is the world's leading live entertainment company. And if UMG was profiting not only from Drake's music, but also from the money that his tour generates, then they had a slice in the pie of the largest grossing hip-hop tour in history. And the same reason that Drake described his life as being on slave to Live Nation mode is the same reason why Kanye had described Drake as being enslaved to his rich baby daddy Lucian and never truly being able to attain financial freedom on his own terms. But regardless, the arrangement that Drake had with UMG put him in an extremely powerful position as an artist. He gets the financial benefits of owning his recordings while letting UMG monetize his music in other ways. But here's the catch. This deal, reportedly worth $400 million, has already expired. Drake and UMG are now at a crossroads. He wants another massive payout, but UMG, reportedly unimpressed by the profitability of his recent work, isn't offering the amount he's asking for. Why the hesitation? One reason is his public beef with Kendrick Lamar, which has undeniably tarnished his brand and reduced his music's profitability. This could be the very reason why Drake believes UMG was incentivized to push the popularity artificially of Kendrick's record Not Like Us, because the more Drake's brand is tarnished, the less he can ask for when he comes back to the negotiation table with the record label. And this situation feels strikingly similar to the battles Michael Jackson and Prince fought with their labels. Let's start with Prince. He was signed to Warner Brothers in the 1970s, and he became a global superstar. But by the 1990s, Prince was frustrated. Warner Brothers controlled his masters, decided when and how his music was released, and slowed down his creative output to space out album releases. Prince's $100 million deal in 1992 was massive, but didn't solve these problems. Feeling trapped, Prince protested by changing his name to an unpronounceable symbol, releasing older material to fulfill his contract, and famously writing slave on his face during performances. These were acts of rebellion, ways to reclaim his independence and highlight the inequities that artists face. Sounds familiar? Drake's recent experiment with 100gigs.org, where he released music directly to fans without UMG, mirrors Prince's defiance. By bypassing the label, Drake was trying to send a clear message that he can succeed without them. It's important to note that, again, Drake's $400 million deal with UMG was quoted as a 360 deal on steroids, as they own profits to not only his music, but also his touring income and any visual media projects that he releases. Along with the various songs that Drake released on 100gigs.org and his Instagram page, he also released dozens of gigabytes worth of old footage of him recording, practicing for tour, behind the scenes, interactions with other artists, and more. While this gave fans a glimpse into the everyday life of Drake from the early moments of his career to the mainstream heights that he later achieved, the footage seemed to serve as B footage for a documentary that Drake was in the midst of creating. A documentary that could likely be sold to Netflix for millions of dollars. A documentary that UMG would profit from greatly if they renegotiated the terms of Drake's contract and signed another 360 deal on steroids. The move to dump all this footage and music on a random website absolutely free was likely an act of protest from Drake against his label. UMG retaliated by swiftly issuing a copyright strike against Drake, which was confirmed by Drake himself via Instagram and led to the temporary removal of the records that he released for free from Instagram and from his own 100 Gigs website. They were later posted on streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify for UMG to profit off of, and the description of the project that contained all of the 100 Gig songs on Apple Music read, "Sift through Drake's data dump for 3 new songs, or hear them here." Very much a subtle dig at Drake for attempting to release the music for free to bypass UMG from profiting off of it. And while this move from Drake bears many resemblances to the strategies that Prince adopted in releasing music under a symbol to avoid sharing profits with his record label Warner Bros. On any of his new music, Drake and UMG's story also echoes Michael Jackson's situation with his record label. Just like Drake, Michael understood the value of ownership. In 1985, he made one of the savviest moves in music history by purchasing the ATV catalog, which included the Beatles songs. Later, he merged it with Sony's publishing division, retaining a 50% stake in Sony/ATV. But his relationship with Sony soured. Michael accused the company of sabotaging his career to gain control of his assets. His final album with Sony, Invincible, was plagued with disputes. Even after leaving Sony as a recording artist, his publishing ties kept him in business with them. Financial struggles eventually forced him to sell part of his stake, but his story remains a testament to the power of owning your work. If the petition against UMG that Drake filed holds any truth, then what Drake believes is that UMG was inauthentically boosting the popularity of a song that made allegations against Drake that would forever tarnish his reputation. By investing in practices that will diminish Drake's brand, UMG will be in a position where they won't need to offer Drake as much money as he's asking for when they renegotiate the terms of his contract. And the main catch here is that it's not Drake's old catalog that suffers from Kendrick's allegations on Not Like Us. Like we saw earlier, Larry Jackson said Drake's catalog is earning more than the catalogs of all 70s, 80s, and 90s music combined. UMG still profits off his old catalog. However, with a tarnished reputation, it'll be a lot harder for Drake to achieve the same success commercially that his old music had when the dark cloud of Not Like Us lingers over his head. He's still the most streamed artist in hip-hop thanks to the success of his old catalog. But if he wants to reinvent himself and reach new heights, it'll be a long uphill battle to do without that major label push from UMG, most notably because of the damage that Not Like Us has done to his reputation, which Drake is claiming was a result of UMG's payola schemes. To put it simply, Drake's old music will always sell, so UMG will always be able to capitalize off that. But the success of his old music was in large part thanks to the same practices that Drake is accusing UMG of using on Kendrick's song Not Like Us. Like I mentioned before, his face was plastered over every single playlist on Spotify back when he released Scorpion in 2018. Before Spotify, he signed a $40 million deal with Apple Music, where he exclusively released his album Views on their platform for the first week of its release, and they plastered his face all across their platform every year since then. Not to take away from the quality of Drake's own work, but there's a reason his popularity massively catapulted around the same time that the popularity in streaming services rose. He has benefited from those very same strategies that Kendrick did of putting his records on every single playlist, having his music pop up next whenever a listener is on shuffle mode. And thanks to that, he's become the most streamed artist in hip-hop of all time, and his old catalog continues to be the most streamed catalog out of any rapper, even today, after Not Like Us. So again, UMG was always able to profit off of his old music. But in order for his new music to remain as dominant on the charts as his old catalog, it'll be nearly impossible to attain unless a major record label deploys those same big budget payola strategies that UMG used on Drake in the past, potentially used on Kendrick with Not Like Us, and uses with many different artists within the industry. What Drake's accusing them of doing with Kendrick is simply very common practice. And whether it's ethical or not, again, if he wants to maintain those highs that he reached with his old catalog, then he'll have no choice but to remain in contract with UMG and continue to play these music industry games. But re-signing with UMG today looks a lot different for Drake than it did before this battle with Kendrick Lamar ever started. The blow that Not Like Us had on Drake's reputation has diminished his brand's value, putting him in a weaker position to ask for more money from UMG if he wants to re-sign with them. If he chooses to go the independent route, he's burdened with marketing his music with a budget that comes out of his pocket directly, and he likely doesn't have the same amount of capital that a major record label like UMG does to work his records to the top of the charts like UMG had done in the past. So if Drake does have a case, ends up filing this lawsuit, and even ends up winning, he will expose many of the marketing tactics that major labels use to push their biggest artists. Again, it's something that Drake has benefited from in the past, but if the courts deem it illegal or a violation of the RICO law, then the strategies for how labels market their music will be forced to change, allowing independent artists to have an upper hand and leveling the playing field between major label artists and independent artists, allowing every artist, whether your budget is small or large, the equal opportunity to succeed and be heard by music consumers. So in Drake's eyes, he likely feels faced with two options: either accept the massive damage that Not Like Us did to his reputation and walk into those negotiations with UMG expecting to be offered a much lower sum of money for a new recording contract than he had previously hoped for before this battle, or he takes UMG to court, tries to fight against the promotional tactics that they use on their biggest artists, the ones that he deems unethical, and on the small chance that he wins, the field becomes leveled, everyone has an equal opportunity, and him as an independent artist can benefit just as greatly as he would have had he re-signed with a major label like Universal. The risk he takes is obviously, again, he has benefited from a lot of the practices that he's accusing UMG of deploying to ensure that Not Like Us was a success and his reputation was tarnished. Speaking of his reputation, he also looks like a horribly sore loser taking this battle to court on the premise that Kendrick made heinous allegations against him when Drake himself made just as heinous allegations against Kendrick and did it before Kendrick ever made an allegation towards Drake. The allegations of Kendrick assaulting his wife came from Drake on Family Matters, which was released and promoted by UMG before Kendrick's allegations of Drake being a PDF file were released on his Not Like Us record. Family Matters was released under Drake's OVO label. However, it was under exclusive license to Republic Records, which is a division of UMG Records. There's no mention in this petition that UMG placed more of a budget into Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us than they did into Drake's Family Matters deliberately. The promotional budgets for both of these records were likely established by Kendrick and Drake's individual teams before they were released. So because Drake has used a lot of these same promotional tactics in the past that Kendrick used with Not Like Us, and because he made heinous allegations against Kendrick on records that were also licensed and distributed by Universal Music Group, ironically released before Kendrick even released his own record, from a bird's eye view, it doesn't seem like Drake has a very strong case. Drake's legal petition also accuses UMG of reducing Spotify's licensing rates for Kendrick's Not Like Us record by 30%. This move allegedly boosted the song's placement in Spotify's recommended algorithms, making it more likely to appear for listeners. Drake was claiming that this tactic was unfairly suppressing his own music during their public feud, since streaming is a one-sum game. If one listener is going to listen to Kendrick, then they're less likely to listen to Drake. And if they're only listening to Kendrick thanks to Universal's promotional tactics, then they are deliberately trying to harm Drake. However, he even stated it in this petition. UMG told Drake to take this up with Kendrick's team because it was likely Kendrick's team that coordinated these promotional efforts. And more important than that is the fact that offering discounted licensing rates for enhanced visibility is a practice that Spotify extends to all artists. It's not unique to simply Kendrick or UMG. Drake's petition is highlighting a practice by Spotify known as Marquee, MARQUEE, where artists or labels can pay for enhanced visibility, such as targeted recommendations or playlist placements at a reduced licensing rate. This tool allows artists to promote tracks by lowering the platform's licensing fees in exchange for preferential algorithmic treatment. The Marquee program is publicly available and used by a wide range of artists and labels to increase song exposures within Spotify's ecosystems. Even if UMG exploited this for Kendrick's Not Like Us diss track, it's available to all artists, Drake included. To put it simply, Spotify will pay a record label less money whenever that record label's song gets streamed, and in exchange, that song will be promoted much heavier on Spotify's platform, allowing it to reach a larger audience. So again, there's a lot of holes in this petition. The chances that it'll actually turn into a full-fledged lawsuit based off the allegations and proof that Drake is bringing to the table are very low. But again, Drake is requesting that UMG provide some evidence that the executives at UMG, at iHeartMedia, and Spotify are all deposed, meaning that they're going to have to be questioned about all these matters. If the court determines that there's enough evidence to take this to court, then there's a lot on the line and a lot that Drake can either win or lose. A very common public defender of Drake, Mal from the Rory and Mal podcast, who claims to be in constant communication with Drake, has alleged that Drake will be asking for $2 billion in damages if he does take this to court with UMG.
We talking upwards of $2 billion as far as compensation for damages.
On the lawsuit side.
Absolutely. I don't care what the barbershops are talking about.
Yep.
If I just sue Universal for $2 billion in my masters and I won.
So again, the stakes have never been higher. If Drake wins, the music industry changes forever. The dynamics behind how major labels promote their artists will look completely different. They won't have the upper hand anymore. They won't be able to exploit their big budgets to make sure that their favorite artists are pushed in everyone's face on every major streaming platform and radio station. Instead, everyone will get a fair shot, whether you got a small budget or a big one. But the question remains, why is Drake choosing now to file this petition? Unless he knows about very unethical practices that UMG used in promotion of Kendrick's Not Like Us record, on the surface, it seems like Drake has benefited to a higher degree from all of these same promotional tactics. If he's truly looking to re-enter negotiations with a major label like UMG, why would he decide to try to hit them with a RICO case? And if he's not trying to re-sign to, as Kanye puts it, his rich baby daddy Lucian, then where does Drake go from here? If he goes independent, that means that, according to Larry Jackson, the music catalog that earns more than all of the 70s, 80s, and 90s music combined is now not paying out a single dollar to any major record label. This would be a gargantuous blow to their balance sheets, and with a lot less money floating around the major labels within the music industry, the dynamics of how the music business operates as a whole will be massively altered forever.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to, guys like this, Rapaholics, because I think they directly get it.